I never thought I'd end up here, but I need to get this off my chest, and I could really use some advice. My name's Jake, and I've been married to my wife, Emily, for about 7 years now. I used to think we had a pretty solid relationship. Sure, we've had our ups and downs like any couple, but we always managed to work through things, or at least I thought we did. The first few years were great. Emily was smart, funny, and, if I'm being real, pretty damn sexy. We had chemistry, and I thought we were a team. But lately, something's been off. I've noticed her pulling away from me, being distant. She started working late more often, claimed she had a lot going on at work, and honestly, I didn't think too much of it at first. I trusted her. You hear about people growing apart after a few years, but I never thought that would be us. I guess the real red flag was when Emily started getting defensive about her phone. She'd never been the type to hide anything before, but now she was taking it with her everywhere, even into the bathroom, like she was glued to it. Anytime I asked her about it, she'd brush me off, tell me I was overthinking or paranoid. I figured maybe it was stress. I was being the supportive husband, telling myself she'd open up when she was ready. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. I just didn't know how bad it was yet. All right, so here's where things started to really unravel. One night, Emily came home late again, saying she was exhausted and needed to head straight to bed. She didn't even look at me when she walked through the door, just muttered something about a long meeting. I figured I'd let it slide, but the next morning, while she was in the shower, I saw her phone light up on the nightstand. Now, I'm not proud of what I did, but my gut was screaming at me that something wasn't right. I've always believed that if you feel like you need to check your partner's phone, something's already broken in the relationship. But I couldn't help myself. I picked it up, and there it was, a text from my dad. At first, I didn't think much of it. My dad, Greg, and I have always been close. He'd helped us with some stuff around the house recently, so I assumed it was something about that. But when I opened the message, I froze. It wasn't about home repairs or family dinner plans. It was a conversation that was way too personal, way too intimate. And then I saw it. Last night was amazing. Can't wait to see you again. XX. I felt like someone had punched me in the gut. My wife was cheating on me with my own father. I honestly didn't know what to think or feel in that moment. Anger, confusion, disgust, all rolled into one sickening wave. I wanted to throw up. I read through the messages, and it just kept getting worse. This had been going on for months, right under my nose. They'd been meeting up while I was at work, while I was out running errands. Hell, even when I was in the same damn house. I slammed the phone down on the bed just as Emily came out of the shower. She must have seen the look on my face because her whole demeanor changed in an instant. She knew. I hadn't said a word yet, but she knew I'd found out. That's when the rage really hit me. I don't even know how to describe the feeling I had as I stood there, staring at her. It's like every word I wanted to say got stuck in my throat. Finally, I managed to choke out, "You've been sleeping with my dad?" Emily's face went pale, but she didn't say anything right away. She didn't even deny it. She just stood there in silence, wrapped in her towel, looking guilty as hell. That silence was all the confirmation I needed. I demanded an explanation, something, anything that could make this make sense. She started crying, telling me it wasn't what I thought. Yeah, sure. Not what I thought. I just read the fucking messages. Then, of course, came the excuses. She said she'd been feeling neglected, that I hadn't been paying enough attention to her, that our marriage had become stale. Apparently, that was enough reason for her to screw my dad behind my back. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It was like she was trying to pin this on me. I told her straight up that nothing she could say would justify what she did. This wasn't just some random guy. It was my father. She had betrayed me in the worst way possible, and she couldn't even own up to it without trying to shift the blame. And then she dropped the bomb. She said my dad had been the one who made the first move, as if that made it any better. I didn't know who to be angrier at, her for cheating or my own dad for betraying me like that. I felt sick to my stomach, like my whole world was collapsing. But Emily kept talking, kept trying to explain away months of lies and deceit. And the more she talked, the less sense any of it made. I can't even describe the roller coaster of emotions I went through that night. At first, I was just furious. I was yelling, pacing around the room, trying to wrap my head around everything. How could they do this to me? My wife and my dad, the two people I should have been able to trust the most. I felt like my whole life had been a lie. But after the anger came the sadness. I sat down on the edge of the bed and just broke. I never thought I'd be the guy who cries over something like this, but there I was, completely shattered. I loved Emily. I thought we had something real, and she'd ripped it all apart for what? Some affair with my father? How does that even happen? I thought about all the times I'd been oblivious, all the moments I'd trusted them both completely. I felt like the biggest fool in the world. Every memory we'd shared, every happy moment, it was all tainted now. I wondered if any of it had been real, or if she'd been lying to me the whole time. At one point, Emily tried to comfort me, but I pushed her away. I didn't want her anywhere near me. Her touch made my skin crawl. I told her to leave the house, to get out before I lost it completely. She begged me to let her stay, said we could work things out, that she was sorry. But sorry wasn't going to fix this. I needed space. I needed to figure out what the hell I was going to do next. The next few days were a blur. Emily moved out, thank God, and I didn't hear from her much after that. But the worst part was dealing with my dad. I couldn't even bring myself to talk to him. How do you even begin to confront your father about something like this? He betrayed me in a way I didn't think was possible. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that he wasn't just a victim, like Emily tried to make him out to be. He knew exactly what he was doing. I thought back to all the times he'd come over to help us with stuff around the house, how friendly he'd been with Emily. At the time, I thought nothing of it. He was my dad, for Christ's sake. But now I could see the signs I'd been too blind to notice. I still haven't spoken to him. I don't even know if I can. After a few days of just stewing in my thoughts, I knew I couldn't avoid my dad forever. My mind kept replaying every single moment of our relationship, family dinners, holidays, how he'd always been this rock in my life. I grew up looking up to him, and now it felt like all of that was gone. I decided I had to confront him, as much as I didn't want to. So I called him up, and when he answered, his voice was the same as always, calm, friendly, like nothing had changed. That pissed me off even more. I told him we needed to talk, and he agreed to meet at his place. When I arrived, he looked nervous, which only fueled my anger. I didn't waste any time beating around the bush. The moment I stepped in, I just said, "How long have you been fucking my wife?" He didn't even try to deny it. He just sighed, like I'd caught him cheating on a diet or something, and said, "Jake, I'm sorry. I didn't mean for this to happen." Didn't mean for this to happen? Are you kidding me? My own father, my blood, slept with my wife, and all he could say was that he didn't mean for it to happen. Like this was some kind of accident. I lost it. I started shouting, asking him how the hell he thought this would end. Why he would do this to me, to our family. And do you know what he said? He blamed me, too. He said that I wasn't being the man Emily needed, that she had been lonely, and that it just happened. The more he talked, the more I realized he was trying to justify it in his head, trying to paint himself as the good guy in all of this, like he was just swooping in to fill the gaps I apparently wasn't covering. I wanted to punch him. I'm not even a violent person, but in that moment, all I could think about was how much I wanted to put him through a wall. But instead, I just stood there, fists clenched, and told him I never wanted to see him again. I told him he wasn't my father anymore, and then I walked out. After that, everything started falling apart even more. Word got around. My mom found out about what happened, and she was devastated. She and my dad had been married for over 30 years. It turns out Emily wasn't the first woman he'd cheated with, but she was the one who broke everything. My mom filed for divorce almost immediately. It was like a bomb went off in our entire family. Suddenly, everyone had an opinion. People were choosing sides, and I just wanted to crawl into a hole and disappear. It was embarrassing. Not only had my wife cheated on me, but with my dad, and now it was all anyone could talk about. Family gatherings became a thing of the past, and I couldn't even look at half of my relatives without wondering what they thought of me, of Emily, of the whole situation. Emily, on the other hand, kept trying to make things right. She texted me constantly, saying she wanted to meet up and talk, to explain things. I ignored her for the most part, but one night, when I was drowning in a bottle of whiskey, I gave in and agreed to meet her for dinner. Big mistake. I don't even know why I agreed to meet Emily. Maybe some part of me thought she'd actually have something to say that would make sense of all this. Maybe I was just desperate for closure. Either way, we met at this little restaurant where we used to go when we were dating. The moment I walked in and saw her sitting there, all dressed up like it was just another date night, I felt this wave of resentment wash over me. She looked good, but it didn't matter anymore. Every time I looked at her, all I could see was betrayal. We barely made it through ordering drinks before she started with the apologies again. "I'm so sorry, Jake. I never meant to hurt you. I was lost. I didn't know what I was doing. You have to believe me." Believe her? How could I believe a single word out of her mouth after everything? But I just sat there, staring at her, waiting for her to say something that wasn't just another excuse. And then, she hit me with the real reason she'd asked me to dinner. She wanted to get back together. She said we could work through this, that people made mistakes and relationships took work. She actually had the audacity to suggest couples counseling. Couples counseling after she slept with my father. I told her flat out that I was done, that there was no coming back from this. The look on her face, it was like she couldn't even comprehend that. Like she actually believed this was something we could fix. She started crying, telling me she still loved me, that she was willing to do anything to make it right. But all I felt was numb. I told her again, for what I hoped would be the last time, that it was over. That's when she got angry. Her tears dried up in an instant, and she started blaming me again, saying that if I had been more attentive, if I had been better in bed, she wouldn't have had to go to my father. She actually said that. I left the restaurant after that, and I haven't seen her since. For weeks after that dinner, I felt like I was drowning in my own rage. I couldn't focus on anything. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Emily and my dad together. I started losing sleep, and even my friends noticed that I wasn't myself. They tried to be there for me, but what do you even say to someone in my position? It's not like this was your run-of-the-mill affair. This was next level. I started pushing everyone away. Friends, family, coworkers. I didn't want to talk to anyone. I felt like I was on the verge of snapping all the time. There were moments when I seriously considered reaching out to my dad again just to beat the crap out of him. But I knew that wouldn't fix anything. It wouldn't undo what they did. So I kept to myself, bottled everything up, and let the anger fester. Eventually, my best friend, Kyle, convinced me to see a therapist. I wasn't thrilled about the idea at first. Talking to some stranger about my problems wasn't exactly appealing. But I was at rock bottom, so I figured I had nothing to lose. The first few sessions were rough. I didn't even know where to start. How do you explain to someone that your wife cheated on you with your dad? But the therapist didn't flinch. She helped me start untangling everything. The anger, the betrayal, the shame. Therapy ended up being a lifesaver. I realized that holding on to the anger wasn't just hurting me. It was controlling me. My therapist, Dr. Parker, kept saying, "You don't have to forgive them to move on. You just have to let go." That hit me hard. I'd been holding on to this idea that if I stayed angry enough, if I stayed mad at Emily and my dad, somehow that would give me control over the situation. But it wasn't working. The anger was eating me alive, and they were still out there, living their lives while I was stuck. It wasn't easy, but I started trying to let go. I'd wake up in the morning and tell myself that I didn't need to carry this weight around anymore. It didn't happen all at once, and there were days where I'd fall back into that pit of resentment, but slowly, I began to feel lighter. I realized that their betrayal wasn't a reflection of me. It was a reflection of them. Emily's cheating, my dad's disgusting actions. It wasn't because I wasn't good enough. It was because they weren't. That was the first step toward reclaiming my life. After months of back and forth, I finally decided to cut ties with both Emily and my dad for good. I'd already stopped talking to them, but I hadn't taken that final step. The divorce papers had been sitting on my coffee table for weeks, untouched. Part of me kept hoping that maybe this was just a nightmare I'd wake up from, but I knew better. I signed the papers and had them served to Emily. That chapter of my life was officially over. And with my dad, I made it clear, through my mom, who was still dealing with her own devastation, that I didn't want to hear from him again. He tried reaching out a few times, sending messages through mutual family members, but I ignored every single one. There was no fixing this. Some things just can't be forgiven. Cutting them both out of my life felt like ripping off a Band-Aid, but it was necessary. It was the only way I could start to heal. Once I was free of Emily and my dad, I realized how much I'd been neglecting myself. I'd let this whole mess consume me for months, and I hadn't taken care of anything else. So I decided to focus on me for a while. I got back into working out, started eating better, and even picked up some old hobbies I'd let slip away during the chaos of the last year. I reconnected with friends I'd pushed away, and I slowly started building a new routine that didn't involve Emily or my dad's shadow hanging over me. One day, Kyle dragged me to a football game, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I actually laughed, like a real, genuine laugh. It was the first time I felt like myself again. That's when I knew I was on the right path. It didn't mean the pain was gone, but it was starting to get easier to manage. It's been about a year since I found out about the affair, and things have definitely changed. I'm still single, and honestly, I'm okay with that. I'm not rushing into anything serious right now. I've been through enough drama to last a lifetime, and I'm still learning how to trust people again. But here's the thing. I'm not broken. At least, not anymore. I was for a long time, but piece by piece, I've put myself back together. I'm not going to lie. There are still days when it hits me out of nowhere, and I wonder how the hell I let it get to this point. But those days are becoming fewer and farther between. I've realized that I don't need to let what Emily and my dad did define me. Yeah, they messed me up, but I'm the one who gets to decide what happens next. And that's a powerful feeling, so if you're reading this and you've been through something similar, or even if you haven't, here's what I want you to know. You're going to be okay. I know it doesn't feel like it when the world comes crashing down on you, but you'll get through it. People will hurt you in ways you never thought possible, but you can't let their actions dictate the rest of your life. Don't let anger consume you. It'll feel good for a while, but it won't fix anything. The only way to move forward is to let go. And that doesn't mean forgiving them or pretending it didn't happen. It means accepting that what they did says more about them than it ever will about you. Focus on yourself. Take the time you need to heal, and don't rush it. And most importantly, surround yourself with people who love and support you. Kyle, my therapist, my mom, they were my rocks through all of this. Don't be afraid to lean on the people who care about you. If you ever find yourself in a situation like mine, know that it's okay to walk away. Some things can't be fixed, and that's okay. You deserve better, and one day, you'll realize that. Thanks for reading. I never thought I'd be that guy pouring my heart out on the internet, but here I am. Life's funny like that, I guess. Stay strong, and remember, you're worth more than the lies people try to sell you.